Hi, Jamie. Thank you so much for joining me today on what will be a chat around a topic I think we both love. And that is it better to aim for the Tesla engine or to rethink and optimize your diesel engine? And before I get into the cryptic nature of that, and in particular what it means for legal, why don't you introduce yourself and what you do?
Yeah, hi Nigel. Looking forward to discussing that today. So I'm JB Goldrich. I'm the Director of Native Solutions and Integrations at SYKE. So SYKE's a legal technology consultancy. I joined the business 3 years ago as the first junior legal engineer. Um, Spent a large amount of time working on projects with our enterprise clients to implement legal front doors, matter management systems, contract management systems. I now lead our kind of native practice, which is focused on how we go from delivering point solutions to platforms, if you like, for legal departments based on the technology they already have.
Great, thanks, Jamie. I can sense you're very much in the Tesla camp on this one, but to provide a bit more context, I think this came from a conversation I had recently with a client, and it kind of got me thinking around this kind of Tesla versus diesel route. To provide a bit of context, at LOD, I look after our legal managed services and how we provide them globally to our clients. A client asked me recently, Nigel, what are your plans around an offshore delivery center, a lower cost offshore delivery center? Are you planning one? And I kind of paused and I said no, but there's two main reasons why. The first is we found that from a kind of distributed teams perspective, you can have all of the effectiveness and efficiencies in this world we work in remotely. I'm coming to you from the jungle. Jamie's coming to you from a cityscape. You can harness that very effectively for managed legal services. But the other reason is at LOD, I suppose our strategic bet is one that if we just think of legal managed services as doing the same process in lower cost jurisdictions, we've kind of missed a trick. And really our investment in time and our energy will be around unlocking the potential of what happens if you rethink that process. So, the poor old NDA process always gets a hammering, but if we're still doing NDAs in the same way we are now in 2 years' time or a year's time, but just from an offshore location, I think we've failed as an industry. We really need to rethink how and why and what is the technology and process that supports those bits of kind of legal business as usual that flows through departments. So that was my way of saying no. But Jamie, I'd be curious. You're at the sharp end of technology. What are you seeing, and what's happening in the kind of client interactions you're having?
Yeah, well, I think a lot of legal teams have grown organically, really, in response to business demand. So a lot of the time, it's been, how do we bring on more people, or how do we reduce costs? Which is why, sometimes people look at offshoring initially. But with that, as you say, a lot of the time, the processes which underpin that legal department haven't been clearly defined, and there isn't really technology supporting it, and that ultimately creates a lot of inefficiencies. So, I think in the early days we often started straight from a particular use case. Quite often contracts, matter management is another area we often start with. But I think sometimes it would be useful if legal teams kind of took a step back really and looked at overall how they're operating. And when you really break it down, everything ultimately starts with an instruction. When that instruction is received, it then needs to be triaged. It needs to be either allocated to a particular lawyer in the team, or perhaps to an outside counsel firm or a managed service, or even to, let's say, an existing policy and template, an FAQ, which could have been really dealt with without the lawyer needing to review it. And kind of thereafter, once you've got the instruction, you then will have a particular process depending on what it is, whether it's an NDA or it's a services agreement, or it's a bit of litigation, or it's an employment matter. Now, I think the problem both for internal firms, but also for I guess service providers is, often all of those steps in the process are manual. So that instruction is often sent by email. it needs to be reviewed manually. It then needs to be manually allocated. And there's then kind of no workflow to support that process. So what we've really been doing recently is working with legal departments to introduce legal front doors, which provides a kind of simple and automated way for submitting instructions, which not only kind of increases self-serve through people accessing standard templates or policies or guidance. It means that actually the request can be properly triaged and allocated, and then lawyers can spend time on what's really important, which is providing legal advice. And I think once those core platforms are in place, that's when you can really start to look at specific processes for particular pieces of work, and you can then kind of determine whether that needs to be dealt with, technology, let's say through document automation or e-signature, or whether in fact we can allocate that to a particular internal professional or external professional.
I really like that answer, Jamie, and I like one of the phrases used in it, which is taking a step back. And I think that's what we're able to do as two organisations that I suppose are new to the scene and aren't burdened by the traditional way of doing things. We don't have that legacy structure that other legal services providers may have, and as such we can solve the problems by taking a step back. So to take your example there, the problem is no longer how do I move this work offshore in a lower cost way. Actually, it's, well, fundamentally, let's take a pause, let's rethink the nature of what is right for that department to be doing, then let's configure the processes, the teams and the tech. I really like that as a way of thinking about things, and I think that's what's quite exciting about what we'll be able to do together, bringing all of that to clients. From a kind of practical perspective, how do you see that happening? What's the typical question that a GC is asking, and how does that lead to that kind of structured thinking that flows through in terms of solving that problem?
Yeah, I think the really interesting statement we get quite a lot from GCs, and it's almost said in a whispered voice because they think it's their problem and it's not happening everywhere else, but it really does come up with everybody we speak to, and a lot of the time it is, we don't know where our contracts are, we don't know what matters are coming in, and I think sometimes there can be a rush to, as I say, jump to a specific use case and get really complicated and implement a dedicated point solution to say, help manage contracts or manage litigation or another use case. But introducing a cost-effective legal front door quite quickly, rolling out the kind of must-haves and not the nice-to-haves, so kind of starting small and rolling out a system where you can really actually start to see some management information which tells you what sort of requests you're receiving from the business. Starting there and then using that data to say 80% of our requests relate to contracts, or 80% of our requests relate to advice on IP. As an example, you can then use that data really to build out thereafter. And I talked at the beginning about using native technology, and that's one of the advantages of doing it. So using a platform like Microsoft or Google really means, what you can do is you can start small with something like a legal front door to capture those instructions, and then rather than using another system which you then need to try and integrate with, you can then build out that specific matter management process for internal use, or even kind of add to that so you have your contracting system bolted on. And then one of the interesting things we're working on at the moment is around outside counsel management and outside counsel portals, and how legal departments can have a single platform for everything they're doing, which can then be shared with outside counsel firms or managed service providers, which is really exciting because it means people can really work collaboratively on that. And rather than spending all of the time we talked about at the beginning around manually checking emails and assigning and allocating requests. People can work collaboratively on whatever that particular business process might be.
I think it's just uh, picking up on that data point. It's really interesting hearing your experiences here, because we have the same aha moment with our clients when we put in place a managed legal service, because often to deliver it well, we are tracking data and we are capturing data that is above and beyond what that department is already capturing, which then opens up a conversation around, well, actually rethinking how everything should operate. And it's funny, you're coming at it from the other end. So both of us are data driven, but actually tackling the problem from two ends of the telescope. Well, look, Jamie, thank you so much for taking time to share those examples. I guess in conclusion, it sounds like the opportunity here, taking your point around GCs and that whispered comment, is seize the opportunity to rethink the Tesla engine instead of trying to tweak the diesel and try and make it a little bit more effective. Now's a really good point to take a step back, ask the bigger question, and then reframe the tech, people, and processes that are needed to solve it.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Nigel.
Brilliant. Thanks, Jamie.